with dinner.
If you have ever been in a near-death experience, you may have seen your life flash before your eyes. I've asked several people about this. They said that it was like going through their whole life in a second. That's not too far-fetched. Your brain likes to avoid stress so that it doesn't have to deal with facing death. So if your brain was to think you were going to die, it would go to the easiest way to escape: memory. So when it comes close to the end, your brain turns on every memory you ever had. The brain will also stay alive for 7 minutes after you die, provided your brain's intact. So if you have 7 minutes, and you can experience your whole life in 1 second, that's 60 lives per minute, 420 lives in 7 minutes. That's a lot of time, and a lot of experiences with death. There was a hunter in the woods who, after a long day of hunting, was in the middle of an immense forest. It was getting dark, and having lost his bearings, he decided to head in one direction until he was clear of the increasingly oppressive foliage. After what seemed like hours, he came across a cabin in a small clearing. Realizing how dark it had grown, he decided to see if he could stay there for the night. He approached and found the door ajar. Nobody was inside. The hunter flopped down on the single bed, deciding to explain himself to the owner in the morning. As he looked around the inside of the cabin, he was surprised to see the walls adorned with several portraits, all painted with incredible detail. Without exception, they appeared to be staring down at him, their features twisted into looks of hatred and malice. Staring back, he grew increasingly uncomfortable. Making a concerted effort to ignore the many hateful faces, he turned to face the wall, and exhausted, he fell into a restless sleep. The next morning, the hunter awoke. He turned, blinking in the unexpected light. Looking up, he discovered that the cabin had no portraits, only windows. Have you ever seen a shadow pass without recollection of what cast it? These shadows, or shadow people, are stalking spirits that seek to drain the life from their victims in a parasitic way. This parasite burrows deep into your mind and multiplies with time. Some people say these shadows are benevolent, and some skeptics say that they are just tricks on the eyes. But one question is ever present among paranormal enthusiasts. How do you see a shadow person? This one should be easy. All you have to do is think of them. The problem is, once you start thinking about them, you won't stop. In fact, you're probably thinking about them right now. So try for 1 moment. I'll give you about 5 seconds to forget about shadow people. You cannot forget. Every time you think about them, they appear like moths to a flame. And trying not to think about them just forces you to think about the shadows even deeper. In your bedroom at night, standing behind you, following you on a set of short stairs, peering at you from the other side of a window, or hanging on the ceiling directly above you. Shadow people will now haunt you. One evening, there was a lone jogger. He was just your ordinary guy who chose to jog in the evening because the air was colder. Back then, some parts of the city didn't have electric lights, especially those near small forests and parks. So he jogged, carrying a flashlight. Then, the day gets darker, and he's somewhat lost in one of these lightless roads. Luckily, there seemed to be a sidewalk vendor in the distance. Feeling a bit hungry too, he decides to order a snack. "Excuse me, sir, can I order some noodles?" the jogger asked. "Of course, some noodles coming up," the vendor said. Now, due to the old oil lamp he's using, his face was obscured by the dark. "By the way, which direction is downtown?" the jogger asked. "Oh, down that way, over there," the vendor said, while making the snack. The jogger waited on the side of the road, waiting for his order. "Ah, the order's done. Here comes the vendor," the jogger thought. To his horror, the vendor carried his order, but he had no face. "Here's your order, sir." Perfectly smooth, no cracks, no wrinkles, just plain, smooth skin. Of course, the jogger freaked out and ran away as fast as he could. He ran and ran and ran, until he met a guy standing near a streetlight, selling cigars. The jogger came from behind the guy, and relieved he found another human, tapped him on the shoulder. "Thank God, I saw a ghost back there," the jogger said, panting. The cigar guy nodded and said, "Does the ghost look like this?" while turning around, pointing to his face. Another smooth face. "Oh, and you forgot your flashlight." At this point, the jogger fainted. When he woke up the next day, he found he's smack dab in the middle of a cemetery. We had just moved into a little ranch house in the suburbs. Storybook neighbourhood, quiet friendly neighbours, picket fences, the whole 9 yards. Suffice to say that this was supposed to be a new start for me, a recently single dad, and my 3-year-old son. A time came to move on from the previous year's drama and stress. I viewed the thunderstorm as a metaphor for this fresh start, one last show of theatrics before the dirt and grime of the past would be washed away. My son loved it anyway, even with the power out. It was the first big storm he'd ever seen. Flashes of lightning flooded the bare rooms of our house, imparting unpacked boxes with long, creeping shadows, and he jumped and squealed as the thunder boomed. It was well past his bedtime before he'd finally settled down enough to go to sleep. The next morning, I found him awake in bed and smiling. "I watched the thunder at my window," he proudly announced. A few mornings later, he told me the same thing. "You're silly," I said. "It didn't storm last night. You were only dreaming." "Oh," he seemed somewhat disheartened. I ruffled his hair and told him not to worry. There should be another storm soon. Then it became a pattern. He would tell me how he watched the lightning outside his window at least twice a week, despite there being no storms. Recurring dreams of the first memorable thunderstorm, I figured. It's easy to hate myself in hindsight. Everybody assures me there's nothing I could have done. No way I could have known. But I'm supposed to be the guardian of my child, and these are useless words of comfort. I constantly relived that morning, making my coffee, pouring milk over my cereal, and picking up the newspaper to read about the paedophile local authorities had just arrested. It was front-page stuff. Apparently, this guy would select a young target, usually a boy, stake out their house for a while, and take flash photos of them through their window while they slept. Sometimes he did more. My stomach sank as the connection was made. At the time, it was merely something of a child's imagination. In retrospect, it is the scariest thing I've ever heard. About a week before the predator was caught, my son came up to me in his pajamas. "Guess what?" he said. "What?" "No more lightning at my window." I played along. "Oh, that's nice. It finally died down, huh?" "No, now it's in my closet." I have yet to see the photos police have collected. "Have you seen my son?" the woman frantically asked the old lady across the street. "No, sorry dear," the old woman replies. "Have you seen my son?" the woman asked the local police officer, more terrified this time. "No, I'm sorry miss, but we'll search right away," the officer responded while taking out his radio, trying not to look at the woman's sorrowful eyes. Please tell me my son is in there," asked the woman to a friend of hers, who happened to live right next to her house. "I'm really sorry, Clarice. We haven't seen him," the mother replied. The woman searched everywhere, ran through every part of the street, screaming, "Where is my son?" She was crying, pulling her hair out in despair. Her neighbours, out of pity, helped her in her search. Jimmy, where are you? Please come out." Starting that day, from 10 in the morning till 8 in the evening, the woman would leave her house, looking like trash. She looked like a risen corpse, pale skin, frizzy hair, and her body growing even skinnier. She screamed at every part of town, "Have you seen my son?" Alas, at the second week of her search, everyone must have thought that she'd already gone crazy. She went to the local police department again. "Have you seen my son?" The officer in charge let out a deep sigh. "I'm sorry, miss." The mother walked home, looking depressed. But as soon as she closed her front door, a smile painted itself across her face. With a smirk, the woman whispered to herself, "I guess I hid the body well."